Okay, Eugene.
Chapter 21, Tug of War in Toka. This is Mehera-Meher, by the way. On 1 April 1928, Hazrat Babajan, who usually never left Pune, arrived by car in Meherabad and parked in front of the girls' school that bore her name. Meher Baba walked down the hill barefoot to greet her from a distance across the railroad tracks. From the bathroom building, Mara and the other women tried to catch a glimpse of what was going on. They could not see much, however, since their view was blocked by Babajan's car and they could not leave their compound. The men Mandali, though, took her darshan and offered her a drink of water, while Babajan and Baba simply gazed at one another across the railroad tracks. After Babajan left, Baba remarked that this day had been the most eventful and significant day of his life. That deserves a little bit of silence. Babajan wanted to see Baba once more before she dropped her body, Mara commented. The next day, Baba returned Babajan's visit by traveling to Pune and standing across the river from where she was seated in Bund Gardens. On 7 May, Baba again went to Pune. On the same day that Babajan again came to Meherabad. Their cars actually passed each other on the road, coming and going. Baba had already begun thinking of shifting the ashram to a different location. And when he returned from Pune, he remarked, "It has now become imperative due to the old man's," in parentheses, Babajan's second visit here. The new location turned out to be Toka, 45 miles away, where a plot of land was purchased. The improvised buildings at Meherabad were taken down and, like a stage set, being struck, and the props moved on to the next locale. The old materials were used to build new structures at Toka. The table cabin by Baba's Dooni was also transferred there, and a new Dooni dug. On Sunday, 3 June, the children of the ashram and the women were taken first to Toka in 4 buses, while the Mandali teachers and family groups came later that day. Baba rode with the women, who were carrying chapatis because it would be late when they arrived with no time to cook. Those going included the elders, Daulatmai, Sunamasi, Gulmai, and Pilamai, as well as the girls, Mera, Small Khorshed, Naja, and Dolly, along with Walu, Shireen Mai, and Mani, who was on her summer vacation, also accompanied the group. The journey made a deep impression on 9-year-old Mani. It felt like scenes I had seen in a Hindi film of a goddess lifting up and taking one and placing one in another place. We were like horses with blinders, seeing neither side, but only responding to the reins of the master. I remember arriving in Toka. Things had just been completed, so we had to wait outside till the cow dung flooring of the hut to accommodate them was dry. The roof of the hut was a tin sheet. A tata enclosure was being erected around the women's quarters. Being small, I was starving. Naja pulled out a chapati for me to eat. Pilamai saw this and started beating her daughter, Scylla, to teach her. Don't you ask for something to eat. Pilamai would scold and beat her because of something I would do. I felt sorry for Scylla, but what could I do? I was hungry, so I had the chapati. Mani left Toka when her father arrived 2 days later, and she cried about having such a short visit. Toka is situated at the confluence of the Godavari and Pravara rivers. It is said that Swami Ramdas and Sai Baba both spent time in the vicinity, which had a tranquil atmosphere. A number of temples are situated on the banks of the rivers, and people rode past them, taking in the idyllic scene. The site for the ashram was located in a large field, and unlike the barren landscape of Mehrabad, the scenery was picturesque, with a view of the broad river, trees, and surrounding hills. Unfortunately, the women could not see all this, as they were once again surrounded by a 10-foot high bamboo matting barricade. But Mera did not mind. At Toka, we felt very free to talk and work inside our large compound, separate from all. You could move around without being seen by men. Kaikushu Masa was the only man allowed to stay in their compound, although two of the Mandali were appointed later to keep watch near the women's quarters. Naja's father, Masaji, was given the duty of cleaning the women's outdoor toilets. The temporary structures of thatched roof huts and tin sheds included a single large tata room for the women, with a partition down the middle, cordoning off a bathing area. Franny occupied an adjoining room with her two little boys, her baby daughter, Meru, and Daulatmai. There was also another, smaller room attached to the tin-roofed kitchen where a few stayed. Their quarters had a bare, stamped cow dung floor and not a stick of furniture. If they wanted to sit down, they had to sit on their trunks, but there was no time for sitting, as they had to work all day and were not permitted to rest in the afternoons. At night, they opened their bedding rolls and slept on the floor. In the morning, their beddings were rolled and placed on top of their trunks. A sheet was hung, behind which they changed their clothes. Things were primitive, and we were just like fakirs, Mera recalled, but we liked it. Our problem, however, was that the bamboo matting walls became infested with bed bugs, which continued to plague them. They bite. Itchy. They tried spraying kerosene and filling their rooms with smoke, but though it did lessen the number, it did not totally eliminate them. There were no mosquitoes, but the bed bugs were awful. But we were so tired by the end of the day, we didn't care what was biting us. However, when Mera was adjusting the bamboo screen surrounding their bathing area, she was stung on the finger or thumb by a scorpion hidden in a crack of the matting. She felt a burning sensation, as if her finger were on fire. But it did not get any worse. This was the second time she had been stung by a scorpion, and again, she was not much affected by it. The women's primary duty in Toka was to make enough chapatis daily for themselves, the mandali, the ashram boys, their teachers and families, some 500 persons. Chapatis for 500 every day? My goodness. They did not have time to knead the dough in the morning, so they kneaded it the night before, sitting outside in a circle and working by moonlight or the light of hurricane lanterns and bright kitchen lights until 9 p.m. Each woman had a large round metal plate in front of her on which the dough was kneaded and then put away for the night for it to rise. As one set of women kneaded the dough, another set cut the vegetables like cabbage or spinach, as the quantity was so great. Dolly, whose hands were strong, stirred the vegetables in large cooking vessels. Baba's food was prepared separately by Naja, assisted by Mehera. Besides helping to cook Baba's food, Mehera ground spices, cleaned the kotumbir, that is coriander leaves, or in America we know them as cilantro, and washed the dal and rice. Baba's utensils, too, had to be carefully washed and put in order. A large pinjra, wire mesh pantry for milk, yogurt, and cream was kept in their rooms. All the cream from the milk was put in the yogurt, which Mehera did with a clean spoon. Fresh butter was made from the yogurt by churning it by hand. There was such an amount of vegetables to be cleaned, Mehera remembered, and so much wheat flour to be kneaded for chapatis. There was a machine to cut the vegetables, but they still had to be cleaned and peeled. The spinach had to be free of grit. The food was to be ready by 10:30 a.m. Fortunately, many girls from the family groups were there to help. Not only us, but everyone else's food had to be prepared separately. The women's, the men's, and the ashram boys, as well as Chota Baba's, one of the boys who had gone into a state of higher consciousness from the wine of Baba's divine love. The call would come in the morning. Is Chota Baba's food ready? And we would send it out. The girls sat on the kitchen floor in front of 4 earthen fireplaces in a row, making the chapatis. The tin roof would get so hot, and the smoke from the wood fires would get in our eyes. Our eyes would run, and we would perspire from the work. We were so unused to such conditions. Tina, I believe there was a little side note at the top of that page.
Oh, yeah.
Or about there. I cannot, it's cut off for me, so you'll have to
It
read.
just says the butter was not eaten, but used to make ghee to cook their food. That's all I see.
Okay, great.
Rosalie, would you like to take over?
Yes. The first of Baba's mandali to be sent to the West, Frainie's husband, Rustem, had gone to England in April, ostensibly to bring back British boys for the ashram school. The British government, however, took a dim view of English children being sent halfway around the world to study with a spiritual master and did not allow them to come, much to Baba's annoyance. But during his stay there, Rustem contacted Merida Star, Baba's first link with the West, and unbeknownst to Rustem, the real reason for his journey. Instead of British boys, Meredith himself would travel to India to meet Baba. Even though Toka was picturesque, Baba was somehow not pleased with the new location. saying that Toka was pleasant, but his heart was not happy there. And the attitude of the Mandali and the ashram boys left something to be desired. Quotes, what is the use of my remaining here when the Mandalian boys disregard my wishes? He asked on 19th of June. How could I be happy when I have to pamper all, fulfilling their whims and patting everyone just to get them to do their duties? That day, Baba had a swing erected near his seat where he sat and rocked himself. It was noted that since moving to Toka, Baba's moods also swung back and forth, genial one day and critical the next. During the day, Baba often came to the women's compound. When he came, the women gathered around him. When he left, all hurried back to their work. Usually, he also came to their quarters for his meals, but after a while, he stopped doing so. For some days, Baba didn't come to our compound at all, Mehera recalled. Baba had, in fact, gone into seclusion in the table cabin on 22nd June without warning anyone ahead of time. Baba's absence inspired small Portia to another of her brainstorms. Quotes, all of us should keep silent until Baba agrees to visit us, end quote. They did, except for Franny or someone else who spoke to communicate their needs. Baba heard of their antics and sent Gulmai with his slate on which he had written that they should not keep silence unless he instructed them to do so. There was constant bickering among the men Mandali about who was spoiling whose work, while their main duty of paying attention to Baba was neglected. On 24 June, when Baba rose at his usual early hour, but found no one to attend him, he became very upset. He warned them, quotes, I am now absolutely fed up. I'm disgusted. One day I will go away all alone, and no one will ever see me in my physical form again. Write this down, end quote. He criticized the women also when he asked for food once at midnight and none was prepared. The women, having assumed that Baba did not want his portion, had eaten it. Meredith Starr and his fiancée, Margaret, and her sister, Esther Ross, arrived in Toka on 30th of June, where they were allotted specially constructed rooms with actual furniture. The Westerners were suitably impressed with Toka's sylvan ambiance. But now the Eastern women had one more group to cook for separately, as the Westerners also had special diets. Meredith insisted that Margaret and Esther eat raw onions with their food, and he himself required copious amounts of citrus fruit. Meredith had been interested in spirituality and Eastern philosophy from an early age and was searching for a living spiritual master. He sold all his belongings before coming to India, expecting to stay with Baba permanently. Baba told him, quotes, the time of my manifestation all over the world is very near. You will play an important part in that universal game of mine. And also, I will work through you in the West. You will work for me directly. I have drawn you here and will make you perfect in this life. But it would be women who actually did most of Meher Baba's work in the West. And the first two Western women to come to Baba were Margaret and Esther. At Toka, they had a hut of their own, and the Eastern women found these new Baba lovers quite congenial, but they did not visit with them much. Only Franny and Mehera could speak English fluently, and they did tell the Western women a bit about Baba. The women had brought small portions foot-operated harmonium from Meherabad, and it was set up in their Tata compound. Esther played the piano and asked if she could use it. The Western women visited the women Mandali's quarters, and while Esther played, Margaret sang hymns. Both were spiritually inclined, and the women noticed that the Westerners always removed their sandals respectfully before entering the women's room. The women Mandali were gracious to these new ashramites, but the presence of the Westerners really impressed the locals, who were amazed that 3 Britishers could migrate to India to join a spiritual ashram. The collector, district commissioner of Ahmednagar, even paid a special visit to meet them. Gulmai usually combed Baba's hair in Toka, but because so many women were present, Baba proposed a lottery to give others a chance. Franny, Pilamai, and Sunamasi each had the privilege of combing Baba's hair. But gradually, once again, only Mehera was given this duty. They used the rather hard well water to bathe in Toka, and Baba still came to their quarters for his bath. Since their room was built of tata matting, there were cracks in the walls, so that Baba would not feel a draft while he was having his bath. They hung an old sheet around the bathing area, like a curtain. After Baba bathed and washed his hair, Mehera dried and combed it. Then when he left, the other women picked up any of Baba's hair that had collected in the drains on the floor, which they showed to Mehera. Mehera said, "We were happy to have the hair, but sad that Baba was losing his hair so quickly." Once, Sunamasi knocked over Baba's drinking water jug. Everyone was anxious about what would happen if Baba asked for water in the night, as he had once asked for his food. It was Mehera's job to give him water, but when Baba found out about it, he told her, "It is no one's fault. This action will have its reaction in the world." Most of Baba's time in Toka, however, was still devoted to the ashram boys. And often when Baba came to the women's quarters, the boys followed him. They did not want to miss his company for a moment, but the women were also eager to have Baba's attention. To decide the issue of how he should divide his time between the women and the boys, Baba proposed a tug-of-war. Baba stood in the middle, the boys on one side, the girls on the other. Baba said, "Pull with all your might. Let's see who is stronger and who loves me more." Holding Baba's wrist, both sides pulled as hard as they could. The girls won, and that day Baba spent additional time with them. Baba often took the boys boating on the river. And one day, he also took the women in a boat to the other shore. Apart from this solitary outing, the women never left their compound. At the back of the compound, however, was a large tree. Once a workman forgot and left a ladder beside it. One of the girls climbed the ladder and looked over the tata. She saw Baba in the field with the ashram boys, and then each wanted to see for themselves. "Come down," they shouted. "Let us see." And each one climbed up for a turn. Mehera said, "We had a good peep at Baba, and he didn't know." At other times, they climbed on top of the large pinchra so that they could see over the tata barricade and watch Baba walking or sitting with the boys with whom he spent most of his time. Meanwhile, vicious lies and rumors were being spread about Baba concerning his school and his conduct with the women. A few parents even removed their sons from the school. Baba was always indifferent to such slanders. But on 23rd July, when more parents came to take their children home, Baba declared that it might be better to close the boys' ashram. He was upset that the boys were behaving uncooperatively, and the weather too had become damp and dreary. There were also a few changes in others staying at Toka. Aga Ali was again withdrawn from the school by his father and taken to Bombay. And on 2nd September, Pilamai, Small Khorshid, left her mother and father also left for Bombay. And the sidebar says, Khorshid and Sunamasi returned after a few days and then left again for 2 months, returning on 17 November. On 8th September, Krishna's birthday was celebrated. Hindus traditionally go to a temple on that day, decorate a small wooden cradle with flowers, and then place a picture of Krishna in it. Since Krishna, like Jesus, was born at midnight, devotees rock the cradle with a string at this hour on his birthday and sing a Krishna lullaby.
Thank you, Rosalie. I could pick up.
Okay.
Instead of making a toy-sized cradle, the women decided to build a cradle big enough for Baba to sit in. They tied a sheet at 4 corners with separate ropes hung from the rafters like, pop-ups. They tied a sheet at its 4 corners with separate ropes hung from the rafters like a hammock, decorating it with flowers. Since they could not swing Baba in it at midnight, they decided to swing him at noon before he went to the boys. Baba came in a bit late for lunch that day. He told them that in honor of Krishna's birthday, the villagers had taken him in a procession on his gadi. They lifted him up and down in their enthusiasm, and Baba commented, "You have no idea how I was bounced around. I was holding on for dear life." As usual, Baba had his bath at the women's quarters. They garlanded him and wished him a happy birthday. Then they said, "Baba, we've made a cradle for you," and proudly showed him their handiwork. To please his gopis, Baba agreed to get in. Mehera held the cradle and as Baba sat in it. He was wearing a white sadra with his hair loose. Mehera remembered he looked radiant. Though the cradle was very low, Baba's legs were not dangling over the side. Gently, the women rocked it back and forth as small Khorshid and the others who had melodious voices sang a lullaby. But before the song ended, the sheet that was rather old, the only kind they had, began ripping slowly down the center. Slowly, slowly, poor Baba began sinking. What is this? He asked with a puzzled expression. With one foot through the hole and one on the outside, Baba stepped out with their help. Baba put his legs out. He didn't fall out, though. We all laughed. Baba wanted the atmosphere to be light, and he found it he too found it amusing. He loved it when something funny like this happened. This is a new kind of cradle, Baba joked before distributing prasad. Some kissed his hand and others bowed to him. Baba was in a good mood and wanted to make the ashram boys happy, so he agreed to their request to let the women dress him as Krishna that day to have his photo taken. He wore imitation gold beads, pearls, and other costume jewelry. On his head was a crown bought ready-made from Bombay, brought ready-made from Bombay by Khorshid. Around his waist, the woman wrapped a pink sari of Khorshid's as a dhoti. Then Baba went out to the boys. Ramju's sister, Amina Jaffer, was living in Toka with the women. She was delighted to see Baba dress as Krishna and had the idea to dress Baba in a traditional Muslim headdress and robe. Years later, she traveled to Mecca on a pilgrimage and brought back such an Arabic outfit. Baba agreed to wear it, and his photograph was taken, but Mehera never saw Baba in it. Baba also allowed the boys to dress him as Lord Ram, as well as a village farmer, a king, and because he told the boys that he would someday go to England, even in a Western suit. It says, sidebar, Mehera did not see Baba wearing the suit either. However, the villagers' bouncing of Baba in the Gadi on Krishna's birthday, and later a jolting ride in the rickshaw pulled by the ashram boys gave him stomach pains, and his disposition suffered. But a few days later, when the headman of Toka came to him beseeching for rain for their crops, Baba gave abundantly. It rained heavily for 4 days. The first night, the women were already in bed when it began to pour. They were so tired that they did not bother to get up to see how hard it was raining. The open ground in front of their quarters became flooded since their rooms were on the same level as the ground. The water flowed inside, and their beddings on the floor became wet. Then the women jumped up and quickly put their beddings back on the trunks. They hitched up their skirts and, running back and forth, began boiling water with buckets, mugs, tins. In this downpour, Baba came into their room with an umbrella and pointed to the sticky mud outside. Bring lots of mud inside and put it across the doorway like a dam, he suggested. 2 girls went out, dug up mud, made a small dam 1 foot high, to prevent the water from entering. The others continued to bail out what had already come inside. When they had somewhat dried out their quarters, Baba said, "Now all go and rest. The water won't come in." Baba saw that we were comfortable and then left, Mehera said. Fortunately, the Tata roof did not leak. But that was the only the first night. As the unprecedented rains continued, the nearby Pravara River started to flood. Again, the villagers came seeking Baba's intervention to save their town. Baba went with them, put his, sorry, I don't know why it's doing that. Put his feet in the river and the water receded. Franny remembers Toka as a place of much hard labor under difficult conditions. There was so much rain, no proper housing. We were very tired at the end of the day. The rainy, wet weather continued, which made it difficult to teach or care for the boys. Baba continued to be in a dark mood. On 18th November, having completed his intensive work with the Prem Ashram boys, in which he promised to put them on the path, and with the winter approaching and the weather making everyone sick, Baba decided to shift the ashram back to Meherabad and send all the boys and others home, except for a few select ones. Having been in Toka for 6 months, Baba and some of the women left in Adi Sr.'s car on 29th November. But first they had to cross the river by boat. To make it easier for Baba, the driver pulled his car up next to the riverbank. But with the recent heavy rains and flooding, the wheels became stuck in the mud. The villagers who had come to bid farewell to Baba offered to bring bullocks to pull the car out. 6 pairs of bullocks, however, were unable to budge the vehicle. Baba told Maruti Patil of Arangan to hitch up his 2 oxen, and Baba himself then went up to the animals and slapped them on the rear. Who'd like to take over? Eugene? Are you still here?
Subsequently,
Wait, I did something wrong. Subsequently, yes. I don't know why that blue is coming on there.
subsequently, the 2 oxen were able to extract the car, where previously 12 had failed. Undoubtedly, Baba patting the oxen had put extra energy in them, Mehera observed. Baba took the pair of bullocks with him to Meherabad, and when they died, he had them buried there at a spot that he himself selected. When Baba returned to Meherabad, Meredith, Margaret, and Esther moved into Akbar Press, the family residence of the Satas, that's Erich's relatives, at Ahmednagar, and sent back to England.
Do you want to continue?
Tap it once more, team. Yeah.
I don't know why this blue lines are coming up.
The Mehera Message, a magazine published by K.J. Dastur, was started at this time. Baba directed that it concerned itself only with spiritual issues and not social and political causes. Whilst venture getting off the ground, Colonel Irani continued his own propaganda campaign, attacks on Baba in the press. And on 28 December, Adi Senior reported to Baba that Colonel Irani was expected to pay a visit. Baba said that if Dalit Mai wanted to see him, she could. Otherwise, she should refuse. But do not give him any cause for offense from our side. If others come, such as the collector or the DSP, that's the district superintendent of police, they may be taken round the premise, but not the colonel. He should stand outside. If he refuses, threaten to bring charges of trespassing against him. The colonel never showed up, but he did come to Meherabad. By that time, however, the women had moved to Nasik and were safely out of his reach. In the meantime, women Mehera, Small Khorshed, Naja, and Walu were again accommodated in post office. Baba stayed on the but after
You're
would have
breaking up,
meals that were
Eugene.
married women were sent home. Baba, he would be leaving in January on a walking man, and he informed the women that as no one would be left in Meherabad, they would be moving to Nasik. Rustam and Franey, with their 3 children, had already there. Rustam had been instructed by Baba to arrange separate accommodations. So on 13 January 1929, the women were taken to Nasik by Mosky. For the next few years, Meher Baba would be traveling extensively, both in and outside of India. Only rarely, sometimes not for months at a time.
Let's see. Gopis.
Part 2, Gopis.
Yes. And we see
Mani's so cute.
I know. Mehera, Small Khorshed, Franey, Gulmai, Walu, Naja, and Mehera are standing. And Mani and Sunamashi are seated. Let's pick up with Pigeon House.
The Maharashtrian town of Nasik in 1929 was a favorite resort for residents of Bombay. Due to its equable climate, it was also considered a holy place for Hindus. Because of its position on the banks of the sacred Godavari River, hundreds of families of Brahmin priests resided there, about whom Baba once commented, Nasik, being a place of pilgrimage, has thousands of sadhus coming daily. Residing here are mostly Brahmins who are very proud of living in such a holy place. They think of themselves as being something great, having been born in Nasik. Now, Nasikites would have another reason for being proud of their birthplace, as it was here that the women Mandali of the Avatar of the Age lived for 5 years, longer than at any other place besides Meherabad and Meherzad. For more than a year, The 6 women lived in strict seclusion in Gole's bungalow, a small whitewashed house known as Kabutar Khana, the pigeon house. Rustam, Franny, and their children occupied a house in the same compound, which was divided down the middle, the other half being occupied by their Brahmin landlady and her family. Next door was the Sarosh Motor Works garage, owned by Rustam, where many of the men Mondali later stayed and worked. The pigeon house had 2 well-built rooms with a bathing room, plus a kitchen that was separate from the main house. Daulat Mai was a wonderful cook, and she and Naja cooked for the women and for Rustam's family. Although the women were no longer living at Meherabad and were now in a metropolitan setting, it did not matter. They never ventured out of the compound and only left the house when going through a mango grove to the toilet. Masaji, who did the women's grocery shopping and saw to their needs, had a small room in the compound. Baba was not with us much in Nasik, Mehera recalled. Indeed, after moving to Nasik, they were taken to Meherabad only once, at the end of January, and most likely left after Baba's birthday. They did not see Baba again until more than a month later, when he came to Nasik on 30 March 1929 for just 2 days. 3 weeks after this, he came again on 22 April for a few days, and then not until 9 May to bid them farewell before traveling to Rishikesh. Baba returned to Nasik from North India a month later and spent another 2 days with the women. Before arriving in Nasik, Baba usually sent a telegram saying that he would be coming on a particular date at a specific time with 5 or 6 people. Daulat Mai, Mehera, and Naja prepared dal and 1 vegetable for that many and kept it ready. Once, however, Baba cabled that he would come at 11 a.m. and he came at 10:30. Moreover, word came inside to Daulat Mai that he had brought more than 10 persons. When Baba came to their quarters, Daulat Mai quoted a Gujarati saying. The village patil, headman, says to his wife that 3 guests are coming for dinner, but 13 came instead. So, dear, just add more water to the dal. Baba laughed, but since there was no time to cook more, they did just that. They removed Baba's share of the already cooked dal and added water to the rest. A little butter and salt were put in to make it tasty and disguise the fact that it had been thinned. Other visitors to Nasik at this time were Gulmai and her daughter Dolly, who stayed a few days but returned to Ahmednagar on 22 June. Baba told Dolly to remain in Khusru quarters and to visit him in Meherabad, along with her brother, Adi Sr. Later, she was permitted to rejoin the group in Nasik, whereas Gulmai would come and go. Baba was back in Nasik at the end of June for 2 days, and again on 10 July, when he took the women to visit the Pandulina caves outside the city. The outing was a rare treat. Since moving to Nasik in January, they had never gone out, even for walks in the compound. Baba also informed them of his upcoming bus trip to Kashmir. Sidebar says, the Pandulina caves are ancient Buddhist caves cut into a hillock that overlooks the city with images of Buddha carved in some of them. Baba indicated that other masters and their disciples had occupied them also. Traveling about in a bus with the mandali was another theme. Another theme that was to gain prominence in later years, and Baba instructed that a bus be built to his specifications. He commented, as you are aware, all my movements and such journeys in particular have some significance. This journey may be compared to a personal inspection tour of state by a king to see how his work is progressing at different places. In the meantime, Baba told the women to put on a play for him when he returned, another activity that was to occupy them in the coming years. The plays often mirrored issues with which Baba was concerned at the time. For this first play, he dictated the script. And the songs were also selected and given to the women. It was very entertaining and amusing, Mehera recalled, not in a serious vein. The play was about Krishna, Radha, and the gopis. In it, Krishna stops the gopis on the road as they're going to sell their milk by jumping out from behind a tree and holding on to their saris so they cannot go further. Not knowing that he is the avatar, they demand, "Who are you to trouble us? I want milk and curd from you," Krishna says, and makes them give it to him. Baba explained that Krishna behaved in this way so that the gopis would have the chance to serve the avatar, and subsequently they became his disciples. Since they had good voices, Mani, who was visiting, played Krishna, and Khorshid played Radha. Khorshid was slim and good looking in those days. Weren't we all, said Mehera, who remembered also that the girls wore lovely sadris, perhaps, meaning scarf.
Owadnis?
Oh, that is an O. That's a strange. Never seen it. Do you know it, Rosalie?
No, I don't know it.
Can you spell that, Eugene?
Yeah, it's let's see, it's OADN.
Yeah. Okay. Odini's.
Uh-huh.
That's a scarf. Odni is like a dupatta. It's like a scarf that women wear.
Thanks for clarifying.
Big piece of.
So the girls were Odini in the play, but did not remember what part she played. I didn't realize you were there. Mona, could you continue reading then, please?
Sure. I just joined in. I'm happy to read. Just tell me from where.
After returning.
Okay. After returning from Kashmir on 26th August, Baba saw the play. He stayed in Nasik for only 2 days before going on to Meherabad. This time he gave the women the theme for another play about a real sadhu and a false one. Pila Mai, also visiting, played the false sadhu, while Gulamai took the part of the genuine one. Mehra, Khorshid, and perhaps Mani played Gulamai's disciples. Naja, Big Khorshid, and Freni were the false sadhu's followers. Baba dictated the general outline and they filled in the plot. Baba was now planning a long journey to Persia, accompanied by some of the men. He came to Nasik on 16 September to see the play and say goodbye to Mehera and the other women, staying only for 1 day before returning to Bombay to resolve a difficulty about his travel documents. Baba had stopped writing since 1927, and the British were unwilling to issue him a visa for Persia without his signature. Even with his thumbprint, Baba therefore declared himself a Persian subject and traveled on a Persian passport. From Persia, Baba returned to Nasik on 16th November, having been gone 2 months. He now wished to stay in Nasik for a while, and since houses were easily available then, one was rented for him. It was called Gas Manzil and was new looking, solid house, large and clean, with a well kept garden and a private gate. Baba occupied the spacious hall upstairs. Daulat Mai and Gula Mai visited him daily and saw to his personal needs. Since Mehra was still quite young at 23, and men were always around Baba, she did not come to his house unless called. The elders, Daulat Mai, Gula Mai, and Sona Masi, and Freni, who was married, visited more frequently. Mera remembered it as quite a walk near the river from the pigeon house to Gyas Manzil. Once, perhaps at this time, Baba took the women on an outgoing to Igatpuri, a hill station near Nasik, where they stayed for a few days in a government rest house known as a Dak Bungalow. They had been cooped up in this pigeon house during Baba's frequent absences, so it was an enjoyable holiday. 9 women went on the trip, which included Mani, Dolly, and Frenny, besides the 6 living in the ashram. Every morning, Baba climbed the nearby hills with the women. Mehra, however, felt afraid while climbing the steeper paths, especially of the sheer drops. She said, Baba, I can't do it. I'm afraid of heights. Baba held her hand and slowly guided her, telling her not to look down until they crossed the steepest part. Another day in Igatpuri, when Baba was seated with the women around him for fun, he said, I've got an idea, something new. He took out a white cigarette from a case belonging to one of the monthly, put it in his mouth, and lit it. He took a puff and blew out the smoke. Now, all of you try, one by one. See how it tastes. He handed the cigarette to Mehra first, but she did not know how to inhale. She took a puff, though she tried not to choke. She started coughing and wheezing. Give it to the next one, Baba said, laughing. All the same reaction, choking and coughing on the smoke. And Baba enjoyed their predicament. This was the first and only time Mera ever tried smoking, but she liked the smell. If someone is smoking a cigar or cigarette near me, I enjoy the fragrance, she said. I love the smell of tobacco, but not someone chews it. I read what's inside.
Okay, we could
Later, when
stop
small
there.
Kush was staying in Bombay during the new life,
I
okay,
think we
let me finish
should
it.
stop there.
She asked Baba if she should smoke, but he said no. I can't hear you.
I think we should stop because it's after 3. Thank you, Mona. It was good to hear it read with someone with an Indian accent.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. I wanted to just write down
Thank you.
where we ended up. That's
Remote
222.
accent is English Indian accent.
Yeah.
Indian English accent.
It's British.
Um,
I live in India and I've learned Indian English, but yeah, maybe I should try my hand at British or American English and learn how they speak.
Oh, that's amazing. You learned how to speak that way in India, not in England.
I've never been to England or anywhere out of the country yet.
Oh, it's
Impressive.
nice to have you join us.
Yeah.
It's nice to be with you all.
Yeah. Well,
Your English is very nice, Mona. I like it.
Oh, thank you, Ralph.
Yep.
It feels
Yeah.
good to hear that from you all. But is this being recorded?
yes,
I'm Ash.
I don't know how to turn it off. Let's see.
It's okay.
Hold on. Oh, stop recording. It's nice.
Today did Marvin.